as a sound phoneme would make the shape of the letter, as in yod, E, Yod, D, from 0 to 5,000 hertz power spectra. This way it creates Y, O, D, etc. So this is called spectrograms of the Hebrew alphabet, proving that the sonic hologram is the optical hologram. Carlos Suarez did that work originally with Fred Wolf, but then I replicated it in my book, Alphabet of the Heart, with the help of Carolee Aber, who was from Jerusalem, and who pronounced the Hebrew letters powerfully, just like they do on the radio in Jerusalem when they sign off at midnight. That's what she told me. But anyway, so you're beginning to get an idea of the power of these things. And then the superset alphabets, if we use the dodecahedron, instead of the tetra, the index, the angle of the electric field, we have A, B, C, D, F, G, and we point toward higher order alphabets, Wolfane and Enochian, etc., etc. So here I've removed the donut and left only the spiral, A, B, C, D. And I'm not changing the shape of that golden spiral on that donut, only your point of view. This is called consumed perspective, or E pluribus unum. And if you can visualize this properly, then you get up off your flatland, get up off your cross and follow me. You leap up off of flatland and enter the next dimension. And you see another word for this is called a rhythmic traverse, which means that if your life is in flatland and somebody says there's such a thing as a cube, you say, oh, you're kidding me, I don't believe it. No, we're down here in flatland. I know what a square is, but you're not trying to tell me there's such a thing as a cube. What a nut. And so guy says, well, no, here, do this little soupy dance. And you walk around like this, and then the cube is going through, and the cube is on its tip, so you see a point, triangle, hex, triangle, point. And as the cube goes down through flatland a million times, if you keep doing this, you do what's called digital sampling rate. And as you blink, suddenly what appears in your mind? A cube, even though you only live in flatland. That's how rhythmic traverse gets you to the next dimension. Otherwise known as the physics of ritual. How a short wave gets into a long wave. So each individual letter of that alphabet, as we see, is fractal. You can zoom in forever. Here's the letter A. Here's the letter S. This is a long series of animations. Don't have time for. This is just an example that instead of simple, flat, two-dimensional gematria, which is childish, Bible code, the series of numbers, no. Each letter is a three-dimensional quantum mechanics phase angle. And if you nest them in the right sequence, you make a three-dimensional wave function called a molecule. And so here's the example of the first word in Genesis, Bereshit. They say Bereshit, the first word of Genesis, means in the beginning. But actually, if you look at the letters, you see properly the meaning. Bet, Resh, Aleph, Shin, Yod, He. This is what it looks like to be outside the donut. From here, this golden spiral, the shadow is the letter Bet, a container, Bethlehem. Then if you walk 1/7 of the way to center, and you look straight at center, the shadow from there is Resh, R, which means to turn, which is why that's the key to the letter word for green in almost every language, R, Ver, green, because that's the turning point, etc. So Aleph, Shin, and then when you finish walking from the outside in and you now arrive at the inside out, you're now in the center looking out, and the shadow of that same donut from that new perspective inside out is letter He, which means amorphous and space filling. And if any woman knows what a man is, he is amorphous and space filling. Okay, that was supposed to be a joke. No. So He means the breath of charge, which is amorphous and space filling, as in heaven, He Ave, the breath of charge that flies. Aleph, Bet, Resh, Aleph, Shin, Yod, He. Bereshit, Bereshit. The first word of Genesis, Sefer Bereshit. And instead of meaning in the beginning, the correct meaning for this term is this is the sequence of turns of mind necessary to turn inside out on a donut, which is how you create mass out of charge. And that's the physics of the symmetry operations called in the beginning. That's right. Specifically, it's the physics of charge compression, otherwise called creation. So the symmetry physics in 3D is actually interesting to quantum mechanics if you understand it. And this business of reducing each letter to a number is childish and trivial in my view. If the three-dimensional physics of electric fields is interesting, plasma residue. So to make a word is actually to get the symmetry correct to nest electric fields constructively so they can bond, which is basically how you make molecules out of atoms. As in the word R-A-Y, raise, trace, that the universe consists of everything that can be named, means the universe consists of every wave function that can phase line.
In the Kabbalah, they've got what they call, what Moses used to separate things. There was two names of God where he had each sort of symbol or sort of coding consisted of three of the Jewish alphabet.
Well, the reason is,
Just a particular manifestation.
if you take the geometry that allows the shadow of the different view of the tetracube, and you place them on the surface of the cube from the different viewpoints, you have a total of 27 viewpoints. And that's why there's 27 otio in Hebrew. And what that's doing is teaching you to gather the donut in your plasma to the right angle to next below that donut at the center of the flame to cause it to implode fuse. And that's the physics of magic. That's also how you make a golem if you're a rabbi. Okay? The thing is, the problem with Hebrew was limited only to tetra, cube, matrix. It's called the matrix. And we're going to get to that story next. So there was a limitation because of the tetracubic symmetry, which was a soulless, a problem that could cost you your soul. So you see the origin of the feminine reproductive organs and the perfect Valentine. And this was called the glass bead game because these are glass beads. And you see the glass bead game. Okay, this is a glass bead game. Thank you, Siddhartha. Okay, and this is about the braiding algorithm. This is about the decadelta. You add them up and it makes the anu. This is the actual equation I use for every single one of those original animations, which I did personally. So in Hebrew, they tell you where you were in the tetracube or matrix by adding tag-in or crownlet, which shows you the three arrows of the tetracube, which corner of the cube you're at. It was an indexing algorithm. Remember, as they said of the runes, these plasma residues, alphabet letters, are waveguides into the mind of the ancient shaman. Now you know what the mind of the ancient shaman is. It's a centripetal plasma field that remains implosive because it maintains this fractality. So if you know the elements of the plasma, the donuts, that can initiate that compression, you can join that mind. That's called embedding of plasma, plasma fusion, the physics of alchemy. So the problem with the Hebrew was it was tetracube limited. And just to illustrate how pervasive that problem was, if you remove the tag-in crownlets from Hebrew and instead add a vertical and horizontal bar to the same alphabet letters, you have Sanskrit. So this, I remind you that this alphabet was an index to getting charged donuts into and out of DNA. Software for genetic engineering, which came from Alpha Draconis. It's clear, and that's the story of this Uru culture we'd like to play with here. So just to give you another little flavor for how fun this is in terms of the history story, has anybody heard of this famous Texas medical doctor microscopist named George Merkel? George Merkel invented this thing called chondriana for cancer. He was studying subcellular structures in his microscope as a medical doctor, and he discovered the origin of the Sumerian alphabet, Sumerian structures. These are called the Sumerian